One of the triumphs of development over the last couple of centuries is how we've managed to conquer increasingly the historic limiting factors of disease and hunger. And as a result of making our agriculture more productive and more secure, as a result of inventing different cures and different treatments for different diseases, we've managed to increase our numbers beyond what was possible throughout the previous history of humankind.
Until not so many years ago, we had two blocks, a communist bloc, a capitalist bloc, vying for people's loyalties and passions. We now have a world that is much more convergent around the role of the private sector, the role of markets, the importance of sustained growth. You know, these are just sea changes.
The world is ever more connected, which means that it's possible to trade globally and to look at new markets. All of that feels like good news.
Connections technology, connecting people to each other and knowledge here to knowledge there. This has exploded over the last 20 years, which should mean we can get solutions more quickly and implement them more effectively.
Our numbers are approaching 7 billion, and by mid-century we'll reach 9 billion. We're going to have to live very differently if we're going to be able to maintain conditions for life on Earth which are going to be of benefit to future generations as they have been to past generations.
The issue for us globally is that economic development combined with population growth means that we humans are consuming more and more and more water. But the supply is limited.
The rush of humanity from the countryside towards cities is putting huge pressures on our existing infrastructure.
Achieving a sustainable economy represents, I think, the biggest business opportunity in history.
Providing people with jobs and income is absolutely fundamental to our well-being. That's really the best thing that business does for the communities.
We have to do what we can to ensure that society is healthy and that we behave in such a way that contributes to the health of society. Business, broadly defined, is the only wealth-generating mechanism in society. Its interests are inextricably linked with those of society. If a society is sick, at odds with itself, business cannot survive.
The expectations of business are rising all the time. Society now expects businesses to get involved with tackling some of the big problems, things like climate change or poverty alleviation.
Resources are finite and increasingly scarce. So it's our commercial responsibility to make sure we use them as wisely as possible.
We all need to work together to ensure that we can come up with holistic solutions to many of these complex problems.
So we mapped the issues that stakeholders around the world felt the challenges were for SABMiller on sustainability. And we also had extensive conversations internally with employees in all different functions around the group. And so the 10 priorities arose out of that conversation. The 10 priorities reflect the diversity of sustainable development challenges that we have around the world.
The 10 priorities presents essentially a menu of options for all of our individual businesses to think about and to apply to their own circumstances. It does provide an overarching framework within which we set out our aspirations. Alcohol is a substance which brings much pleasure to many people in the world. Most people use it wisely, but it is controversial in many societies.
We are engaged in many alcohol abuse-related projects around the world. We're trying to educate or help people not to behave in the way that it is wrong.
Our responsibility as an alcohol company is to make sure that they have available the information that they need to make those choices.
To avoid damage to the drinker and damage to those who surround the drinker.
Our future is fully entrenched in a responsible understanding by our consumers of how beer should fit into society and into the occasions where we consume alcohol.
Many of our breweries operate in water-stressed areas, so the threat of their continued operation is going to be whether the surrounding population and the regulatory bodies feel that they are managing the shortage of water well and are acting in the interests of society.
The experts are saying in 2050 that ice will not be seen at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And if we lose that cover of snow on top, there will be quite a difficulty in getting sufficient water.
Beer in itself is a thirsty product that needs a lot of water to be available to us.
The challenge for consumers, for communities, for businesses is to think about how we can all reduce our carbon emissions. Thinking about how we can replace energy sources that are quite high in carbon emissions, like coal or fuel oil, with renewable fuels, like the rice husks that we're using in different breweries in India.
The first thing to do is to avoid unnecessary energy use. The second thing to do is to identify those technologies and systems that can make the use of energy as efficient as possible.
With the modernization of the Pilsner Urquell brewhouse, we've been able to reduce our emissions by some 87%.
Well, packaging is very important for a brewer because it protects our products. It means that our products get to consumers safely, in the right quality, and of course it's a really important way of communicating the brand. But because it uses materials like glass and aluminium, it also has a negative impact in terms of its environmental impact.
Here in Colombia, consumer behavior towards recycling is very poor. People are not aware of the importance. They are not even aware of how to recycle, how to separate materials.
One of the things that they can do through packaging, of course, is to help influence consumer behaviour and to speak about the impacts of packaging and helping people to see better ways of disposing of it through those very powerful messages that can be held on the back of a can or a packet or on the back of a carton.
We're in a good place in the sense that a significant proportion of our material already has a next use.
The less we waste, the more we can recover from what we use, the more productive and therefore the more economically sound our business is.
Cradle-to-cradle philosophy says that whatever we're making, the waste at the same time must be used for something else. It's not only the right thing to do from a company reputation perspective, it's also the right thing to do as us, as humans.
Beer is brewed locally from local products and sold to local consumers. So there's a real opportunity for us to use our value chain to ensure that we stimulate local enterprise.
We employ about 70,000 people directly worldwide, but the multiplier in local communities from that employment is much, much higher. That ratio can be substantially enhanced by encouraging the growth of local agricultural raw materials and by encouraging industries to supply other raw materials and other services.
The main thing is certainly is employment is created. And then over time, I think it also creates skills and creates an ongoing industry that then clearly has the multiplier effect.
Being a responsible business means thinking about the health of the broader community, thinking about how we can optimize job creation in those economies because of the feedback loop, ultimately, to our bottom line.
We started a program by the name of the Stappen Futuro, where essentially we take in a whole group of applicants, we train them in business planning, we give them broader educational input as well, and we then help them in put together a business plan on the basis of which we then make grants to help them start their businesses.
If you have an economy that is full of entrepreneurs trying out new ideas, investing in new businesses, employing people, then you have a much better chance of economic growth.
Well, SABMiller operates in many markets where the level of HIV/AIDS prevalence in the local population is over 5%. So clearly that's important to us in terms of our own employees, but also the people in our supply chains and, crucially, our consumers.
If they're spending their money on seeking care, if they're not able to go to work, if they're low productivity, then it's going to affect demand for the resources of any company that is operating in that economy. And when a society has a problem like HIV/AIDS, then business must make those moves to show itself to be a good citizen.
Global companies should be and are measured not by local standards of human rights, but by global ones.
It's absolutely essential when it comes to human rights that we aspire to the highest levels in every one of our countries.
Businesses do also need to play some role in making sure that human rights are protected, making sure that when we buy coal for our furnaces around the world, for our boilers, again, that the working conditions in the mines that we buy coal from are the right standard.
My generation, we have lived in the world of total lack of transparency. That was during communism. So I think many people are just discovering now the transparency as an important condition for many values to actually live.
Companies that take the time and energy to understand who that range of important players and communities are and get the messages thoughtfully communicated to them and engage them where appropriate, I think are likely to be much more robust and successful than those that don't.
Our employees want to work for a company that they know is open and fair and honest. Our suppliers want to be able to trust the company that they're providing supplies to. All of that is an important part of trust, and trust is important to our licence to operate.
We're working on sustainable development because our future depends on it. Because it's only by helping society succeed, by helping communities become healthier, by protecting watersheds, protecting the environment, and by creating jobs and economic growth, that we as a business will succeed in the long term, because we depend on society's success.
I'd like to be part of a world in which we all assume our responsibility and role as corporate citizens.
Where human being lives in harmony with nature.
All these stakeholders involved, where we're working together to really see a better world.
A world more fair, where the citizens may have the same opportunities.
Where people have access to the basic needs.
There's no drought, people are healthy and they're happy.
Preserve what is good and sustainable for the future generations.
To make sure that those that follow us have a better world.
Sustainable development is, in fact, very important and crucial to our long-term health, survival and license to trade.
We only have one future.
One future. One future. One future.
One future.
One future.
One future.
One future.
And we all should think about what we can do individually to further sustainable development within our company.